Okay, so today's problem is a 2007 Chevy Silverado 2500 heavy duty, but it's a 2500 Classic, so that makes it basically a 2006 body style. And if you're not careful when you're choosing the electrical diagrams, there could be significant differences. So this 2500 Silverado is referring to the 2007 body style, and this is actually a 2006 body style, so that makes it a Silverado Classic 2500. And we're going to look at the electrical circuit for the starter because the starter is not cranking. Electrical diagrams, starting and charging, starting diesel. So here is the electrical diagram. I'm going to try and zoom in on this a little bit. Maybe blow it up a bit so we can see it here. So we can see that the ignition switch right here gets its power from this 40 amp fuse, and the ignition switch sends a signal to the crank fuse and to the ECM. The ECM sees the crank request. It also sends it over to the transmission control module for whatever reason. Now the transmission control module communicates via class 2 serial data with the ECM to tell the ECM whether it's in park or neutral, as near as I can grasp. Now the starter relay is supplied power from the ECM when all the conditions are met, and the starter relay is grounded all the time at G104. My problem is the PCM is not, or the ECM is not supplying the power to the starter relay. I can make the engine crank by jumping 30 to 87 at the starter relay. I have a good ground on the control side of the relay. I have no signal voltage to energize the starter control circuit. I've confirmed this circuit, 625, this yellow-black wire from the actual relay to connector 1, pin 71 at the ECM is good. The ECM communicates with the scan tool. There are no fault codes related to the starter, no fault codes related to security. I don't believe security system on this thing can actually disable the starter. I think the standard operating procedure when there's a security issue on these GMs is that the vehicle will start and die, start and die, start and die. This thing doesn't crank at all. So I can make it crank by supplying power to pin 71 of the PCM, and that leads me to believe that the PCM has failed for whatever reason. I got communication with the transmission computer. The engine control module shows that it's in park and neutral. Everything indicates that the PCM has failed. So we're going to reflash a used PCM in this thing and see what happens. So I've already logged into AC Delco and I've paid my $40 US for access to programming, and I'm going to start service programming system, and it's going to download the necessary files here, and I have to install it on the computer here. And this will take several minutes to install, and once installed, then it should allow me to reflash this ECM. Now, if you're doing this as an independent shop, you must have the original ECM in the vehicle because it is going to read the VIN number from the original ECM, and that's how GM sells their service programming now. So I've got the original ECM installed. It still communicates with the scan tool, so it should still communicate with this thing. And this takes several minutes to install, so I'll pick up once the software is loaded. So now the software is loaded. I have a battery charger connected to the vehicle battery. I'm using the MDI2, and I'm going to go replace and reprogram ECM. Next, it's going to ask me to turn the key on, verify the battery is fully charged, turn the key on, engine off, which it is, key is on, and next. Hopefully it should read. Unable to read version information. Oh, just wonderful. There's always something. So we're going to try this again, but we're actually going to try it with the Ford VCM2. I don't know why the GM MDI2 is not working, but we'll give this a try. Hopefully this works. I checked the pin grip at the DLC, and it seems to be okay. Key is on. It could be a driver problem. See, now it's working with the Ford VCM2. Oh boy. Anyways, Chevrolet 2007 light duty truck, pickup, old body style. Sorry for not holding the camera steady. Make sure the VIN is correct. If the VIN is incorrect or missing, enter the VIN. So I'm going to have to enter a VIN manually. I manually entered the VIN. We're going to go next. Input VIN is invalid. Oh, really? Well, let me double check that again. Well, I've double checked this VIN number 3 times against the VIN plate. It is correct, yet this thing keeps telling me it's invalid. So I think I'm going to try putting in the used ECM and see what happens with that. So we'll try this again. It's a Chevrolet 2007 light duty truck, CK pickup, old body style. Say next. Let's try manually entering the VIN one more time. Okay, so let's try again. Next. Why does it keep saying the VIN is invalid? I guess I'm going to have to call tech support. That's crazy. It's the right VIN. I've double checked it, triple checked it, quadruple checked it. I'm not sure what's going on here. Okay, so I spoke with Mike at tech support at AC Delco. Good thing they're open till 8 p.m. And it appears somehow the laptop entered a space at the end of the VIN number. I simply had to put the cursor at the end of the VIN number and enter and hit delete, and then it went through. So I've got the used PCM in there now, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to do ECM programming, normal, say next, and turn the ignition off, replace the existing controller. I've done that already. Communicating with the device. Hopefully this is going to work. What else can go wrong tonight? Looks like it's gonna, I'm not gonna say anything. EGR motor fast cleaning, new software for EGR cycling and robustness. Say OK. And then next. And we've downloaded the file and it's beginning the reprogramming procedure. Unknown error during service programming event. Please contact GM support if problem persists. This is just wonderful. Well, at least it's a new error. Well, let's see where to start. I spent several minutes on the phone with AC Delco, technical support, and reset the computer twice by disconnecting the battery. Pulled the info fuse because apparently the rear seat entertainment system is known to cause an issue with programming the ECM in some of these model vehicles, and we're going to cross that myself. Tech support is suggesting that because we have these network codes with the transmission controller, I should be figuring out why those network codes are present. The strange thing is, if I put the original computer in, I don't have these network codes, so I was leaning towards possibly the network codes being caused by incorrect programming, because this is an 06 computer, even though it's the same part number. It's got an 06 VIN number in it. They also suggested that possibly the ABS codes that are coming up could be influencing the programming. I find that hard to believe, but I'm not the programming expert that they should be. I don't think I'm going to address trying to fix the ABS codes to see if that corrects the problem. I think I'll disable the ABS and disable the fault codes. I also asked whether or not running dedicated wires to the scan tool or to the interface at the DLC from the ECM would fix the problem, because it has a class 2 data on number 2 pin, and 6 and 14 are CAN high and CAN low, but he couldn't tell me whether it uses class 2 data for programming or the CAN bus for programming. So I've measured terminating resistance on the CAN bus, and it's 60 ohms, so there's no obvious short in there. So I'm kind of at a loss. I think I'm gonna try putting the original ECM back in and see if I can program that one, just because I'm here and it's the same VIN number. So I'm going to give that a shot. Okay, so reinstalled the original ECM and cycled the key and waited 30 seconds and no faults. And I have communication with the transmission computer, I'm sure. Data, let's look at data in the tranny computer. Transmission data. So I have transmission data. So, is it possible that the used 2006 ECM is corrupt, defective? I'm going to try flashing this original ECM. Maybe there's an updated file for it, but I'm going to try flashing it and see if that works. If that works, then that could suggest that the used ECM is defective and the network codes that it's generating are interrupting the programming, and hopefully the drive transistor that drives the starter relay has failed. So we'll exit out of here and retry programming. Okay, so we're going to try to flash the original PCM with, there is an updated software to address EGR improvements. If that will flash, then that would pretty much prove that the used 2006 ECM is defective. It has the same calibration. So we're going to say okay, just because I want to see if it'll do it. Doesn't recommend that, I know. GM doesn't recommend to reprogram with the same calibration. Select OK to continue. Reprogram it anyways. And then next. Okay, so let's see what happens here. It's not a good sign. Same error message. Now, tech support had me do this 3 times, and it'll give me more details about the error message. So it's got to be a network issue that's causing the problem. Now we get more information. Error code 4491, reprogramming error. Check all connections, reset the programming interface. Do not replace the control module. May first ensure programming device is updated with the latest software. Now I'm using the Ford VCM2 because for whatever reason the MDI2 wouldn't work. This time I got no line operation and error code. Before I had line 2 operation 10 and FD, whatever that means. They seem to know what that meant. Oh, this is turning out to be an interesting job. Alright, well, I'm going to cancel out of here, and the computer is now sort of in a hung state, so I have to disconnect the battery for 1.5 to 2 minutes to get it unlocked. Oh well. So we're back in the data list with the original ECM. It is not in fail-safe mode. It's not in vehicle auto-learn mode. There's no codes in the BCM regarding anti-theft. It's in park neutral as is indicated over here. Yet when I turn the key to crank, there is nothing happening. There is no crank request PID on this, so there's no status of whether or not it's attempting to crank it. If I exit out of here, this is what I've been chasing on this vehicle. If I exit out of here and go into the BCM, body control module, display codes, current codes, no current codes. I have not disconnected the battery from the last programming event. No. Is there history codes? Well, yes, I had the PCM disconnected, so it stands to reason I would have these history codes. Let's clear these out of here. Okay. Ah, boy. Let's do another code scan. Now, I personally don't see how the left front wheel speed sensor active fault code could be affecting the programming. The guy from AC Delco Tech Connect suggested that's a possibility. Didn't seem to be too concerned about that. We do have a U1000 code in the airbag. Is that active codes or in history? It doesn't specify. I'm going to do a network code clear and recycle the key and then see what comes back. So I did a network code clear, cleared 16 controllers, and then we'll rescan again, cycle the key off and then back on and rescan for network codes. So I had originally tried to program using GM's MDI2 interface, and I had gotten that original error message, and then I switched over to the VCM2. So now I'm reinstalling. I removed the drivers, I removed the MDI software, and I'm reinstalling it from the GM website to see if I can at least resolve that issue. I'm not sure why that might be. It could be because I recently changed the hard drive in this computer and the memory, and that may have changed the digital signature of it. I know I had to get my subscription reset with General Motors because it said I had exceeded the maximum number installed. They allow you to have this installed on 3 PCs. So that happened this morning and I got that reset. We're trying to update the MDI software here to see if it's going to at least get past that first error message, and we'll try reprogramming with the MDI software. Well, that MDI software takes 20 minutes to half an hour to download, and there's no status bar, so you think the computer is just hung, but it's not, so you got to sit there and wait for it. Now it's in the process of actually installing the necessary program features and obviously drivers for the MDI2. Hopefully it'll work afterwards. So once you get the manager installed, then you have to connect the USB cable and make sure that the software in the MDI is compatible with the software. We'll worry about the network setup and the wireless later, but it is capable of that. But we're not going to do that at this point because I'm not using it as in a wireless mode, but you have to connect it to the DLC to set it up for wireless, and we're going to see if it reads correctly now. Well, reinstalling the MDI drivers and reconfiguring it got it to accept to this point where we're about to reflash the original ECM again. I got to bad feeling that it isn't going to get past here. I know it's the same calibration. Yes, I'm going to do it. I know GM doesn't recommend to reflash with the same calibration, but I just want to see if it will in fact do it. So let's see what happens here. I don't like this already. Should go beep any second now. Yeah, there's our error message. I think we need to have a fire sale with this truck. Okay, so there we are, same fault code I had before, 210FD, whatever that means to tech support. I don't know what to do now. Maybe run dedicated wires to the network. It doesn't have an aftermarket radio in it. It did have an edge tuner that is disconnected. No aftermarket car starter, that's been disabled and disconnected and removed. Info fuse has been removed. I guess we'll do another network scan and see what kind of codes it's generated. So I got this OBD2 breakout box installed between the Veris connector and the DLC. So you can see class 2, this is pin 2, which is class 2 serial data, and this is 6 and 14, so you can see the flashing indicator lights, plus the system voltage on it. I kind of like this thing. Seems to work pretty good. I was hoping maybe when I try and flash this thing I could see whether I had communication on the class 2 data. Whatever. We're going to scan it. We're doing a network scan now. And you can see that I don't know why the scanner is activating pin 10. Boy, that's a bright light. Wow, those are bright. Anyway, so we do have left front speed sensor code, electronic front end sensor code, and lost communication with the VCM, PCM. But those are due to me trying to flash the computer, I'm sure. So I'm going to clear all codes red. Again. 16 computers, codes cleared. I'm going to cycle the key off for several seconds. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Turn the key back on and do another code scan here and see if anything other than those ABS codes come up. So we got an ABS code, front wheel speed sensor, electronic front end sensor 2 fault, and everything else is cleared. So I can't see those codes affecting this programming event. It just doesn't make sense to me. Oh, I'm going to have to do some research, see if I can find some cases on this. This is going to drive me to drink. Time for a beer. Well, this would be so much easier if it had just the class 2 serial data, as in a 2005 or earlier version. This is class 2 serial data going to pin 2 of the DLC there. Goes to splice pack 205. What we could do is locate that splice pack and take everything off that splice pack except the ECM and try and program it that way. So in other words, disconnect the splice pack and connect the wire that goes to the ECM to pin 2 of the DLC. Somewhere in here is ECM. Driver's door, memory seat. Oh, there's another splice pack up there. I'll take all the unnecessary modules off the bus. Passenger door module. Electronic brake control module. I don't think it has that. I don't see an electronic brake control. HVAC computer. Oh, there's the powertrain. So, oh, that's gas, diesel. So, basically, take pin B, which goes to the engine controller, and connect it directly to pin D so that it goes to the data link connector by itself, and then retry this. That's provided it's not trying to program across the CAN bus network, which is pin 6 and 14, which are not illustrated in this diagram. They're in the next diagram here. Oh, that's the other half. That must be on this one. Yeah, there's the CAN bus network. Pin 6 and 14, and then it goes to a transmission controller. Well, it depends what transmission it's got. There's the glow plug controller. It's got a 120 ohm resistor in it. And the engine control module has a 120 ohm resistor. I've measured terminating resistance at the CAN bus 6 and 14, and it's like 61 ohms. I've looked at the network signals, and they look like perfect textbook CAN bus signal, 2.5 volts with 1 volt up and 1 volt down, mirror image of each other. But something's causing a communication error. I think I'm going to go for the low speed serial data, find that splice pack, and take everything off this splice pack except the DLC connector and the PCM, because there's other wires going off to another splice pack here, splice pack 207. We're going to leave that out of the network. We don't need anything except for the PCM and the DLC connector plugged in. So we'll try and find that splice and disable it. So I went underneath the dash looking for splice pack 205, and I see some tape, and this wire, pin 2 serial data wire, has another little wire tied into it, which goes over to this little ADS GM module, which is probably used to lock and unlock the door locks or some other hocus pocus with regards to the network. So that wire was still attached. This little box was still semi-attached. I'm not sure if it's got power to it or what. So I've taken that wire off, and we're going to try again before we find that splice pack and disable it. Well, there's splice pack 205 with the comb removed. It's a pain in the ass to get at. It's behind the dash, just behind the instrument cluster, but a little bit below it. And what I've done is I've removed the splice pack, and I've connected pin D, which is purple, that goes to serial data wire number 2 at the DLC, to pin B, which goes to the powertrain control module. So we're going to make sure we still have communication with the PCM, because if we don't have communication with the PCM, I'm on the wrong wires. So let's see if we got codes. Of course, now I see no communication, so I got to double check my connections. So I'm in the right 2 pins. I've got access to the ECM, transmission controller, and glow plug controller. Those are all on the high-speed network, and it appears that I still have communication with the ECM, so I'm going to back it out of here. And go into engine, automatic transmission, data display, engine data 1. So I do have engine data. So we're going to reconnect the MDI and try and reflash that ECM now that every other computer is off the serial data line except for the ECM. So this is the last attempt for tonight. I've got splice pack 205 disconnected, and only the wires going to the serial data wire going to the PCM connected to the DLC, and had communication with it, but I'm not sure if that communication is occurring across the CAN bus wires or the serial data wire. But we still got the same error message trying to reflash the original ECU. So the next step then is to remove the unnecessary controllers off the off of the high-speed bus, which would be the transmission controller and the glow plug controller. I think it goes from the PCM through the transmission controller to the glow plug controller, and the glow controller is at the other end. It does contain a terminating resistor, so we theoretically need to put 120 ohm resistor in parallel across the output wires on the CAN bus at the transmission controller, I guess. Anyways, I'm going to look at the wiring diagram and we'll try again tomorrow night. So here's the high-speed CAN bus network on this thing. Goes from pins 6 and 14 to the body control, to the engine control module, and in parallel to the transmission controller. And then from the transmission controller it goes down to the glow plug controller, and you can see the termination resistor in the glow plug controller. So I think I'm going to disconnect the transmission computer from the high-speed bus network. I know that's going to affect the termination resistance, but I'm hoping that if the transmission controller is interrupting communication, it'll be off the bus and prevent that. I guess I could jump across these two pins on the transmission computer to install the glow plug controller in the circuit, but I think I'm just going to try with the transmission computer unplugged and we'll see what happens. So with the transmission controller unplugged, taking the tranny computer out and the glow plug control module out, it still wasn't able to program it. Program the used one. I put it in or cycled the key and read the codes on it. There's only two computers that come up now. Well, basically the OBD2 side of the PCM and the PCM itself. So that qualifies two computers in Snap-on's world. And the strange thing is, I've got a code for the mass airflow sensor. I've got a code for the generator L terminal. And lost communication, obviously, with the TCM. But this glow plug code was here before. How could it have a glow plug code for number 4 cylinder like it had before, and the glow plug controller is disconnected from the network right now? That is bugging me. So I'm starting to think that this used computer is defective, maybe was previously tuned and is locked. You know, any possibility like that is possible. I wonder if I can read the CVN numbers out of it, and I wonder if that would tell me if it's been previously tuned with some kind of aftermarket tuner, and that has locked it so that I can't program it with the factory scan tool. I don't know. Clear codes. Say yes. Codes continue. Cycle the key off. Turn the key back on. Codes menu. Display codes. Now, there's no way it should have. I can see the generator L terminal and mass airflow sensor if there's actually an issue with those things. But that code shouldn't be there. Malfunction indicator light control circuit, possibly, but that code should not be there. And yet I don't have these codes with the other computer in there. I'm going to put it back in even though it won't work. I'm going to put it back in and see what kind of codes it sets. It should be just setting codes for loss of communication with the TCM and the glow plug control module. Oh boy, this is turning into a real headache. So here we are again. I've got the the original ECM back in. I've got the entire serial data network disconnected from the DLC except for the scan tool. So this DLC pin 2 goes directly to the PCM, and that's it. No other network computers, because I got the splice pack number 205 disconnected and 2 wires jumped in there. I got the transmission computer disconnected and that takes the transmission computer out of the network as well as the glow plug control module. They're both off the bus. So I'm in the PCM now. This is the original one, and I'm checking it for codes, and it reports no codes. Now, how is that frickin' possible? Yet the other used computer reports a whole bunch of network codes with the tranny computer. I'm starting to think that they're both of these computers are defective. I guess I'm going to have to look for a third, either used one or a new one, and start over again. So we got the used computer back in this thing, key on, in OBD2 generic functions, and we're going to have a look at calibration identification. And it says ECU ID $E8, calibration ID not supported. And let's try calibration verification number. Not supported. That's not normal. You should have a bunch of calibration IDs here. So it's looking like this used computer has been tuned. See, the VIN number is here. I had that before. Now that's the VIN number in the used computer. Same engine transmission combination. I checked RPO codes against that, and it has the same engine and tranny. I'm not sure about the rest of the options, but definitely same engine and tranny. So this is interesting. I'm going to try and find another computer.